In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, the light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This is the word of the Lord.
So I had a little bit of an epiphany earlier this week, and basically boils down to this. So far, and I don't know if you feel this way, maybe you do, but so far, the 21st century has been a whopping great disappointment. See, when I was a kid, and I'm talking about like mid-'80s, right? Mid-'80s, I had these books about the future, and I'm trying to figure out where that future went, because it involved robot maids who would do my laundry and flying cars and awesome things. What it did not involve is people cutting each other's heads off. And it did not involve horrific war, and it did not involve epidemic disease, and it didn't involve all these other things that you see when you turn on your television. And like I said, I'll come out and say it. I think the 21st century is a dud. We should just call it quits now and start on something new. The future stinks. I've just been there. And this is why, this in a way is why for the last couple weeks we've been spending Advent here talking about promises, talking about the promises of God, the promises in the face of the darkness of this world. Promises to keep us sane and keep us going, and the promise that in spite of it all, Jesus wins. And the promise that those who belong to him are in on the victory, will withstand the trials and the tribulations of a godless world simply because he is stronger, he is greater. Stuff to sustain faith during dark and difficult hours. And this is one of the most profound here. Verse 5. One of the most profound, a crutch to the doubting, a buttress to the weak, a strong hand up to those about to fall. A simple assertion here. Verse 5, that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That, if you understand it, that'll keep you going. What does it mean? Well, the light. Who is the light? It's the standard Sunday school answer, right? The old joke about Sunday school, and teacher asks, what kind of animal, sleeps upside down in a tree, hanging by its tail, with its babies on its back, and the kid says, well, we all know that the answer is always Jesus, but it sure sounds like an opossum. Jesus, right? You've heard that, haven't you? Well, I did not make that up, I promise you that. He's talking about Jesus. How do I know? You almost have to read this backwards, these first 5 verses. You almost have to read them backwards to understand. One verse earlier, in verse 4, he says that in him was life, and the life was the light of men. The him in verse 1 is the Word. Logos in Greek, the Word, who was with God and who is God. And in case you're still confused, John explains a little later here in verse 14. He says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The Word is the subject of the whole book. Jesus, the light, the life of men, the one who himself declared, John 8, verse 12, I am the light of the world. As for the overcoming part, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Some of you have Bibles. If you were reading along on your own, you might have a translation. Occasionally, there are a couple translations that say that the darkness has not understood it. That's bad translation. Don't. The other place that John uses the same word, it clearly means overcome or overtaken. So the promise here boils down to this. The promise here boils down to this, that Jesus has come into the darkness. The light of the world has come into the darkness of the present age, and that the darkness has not defeated him, and just the other way around, he has overcome the darkness. What is the darkness? The darkness is a world that, according to verse 10, that does not know him. A darkness that conceals, that hides, that obfuscates, that denies the sin and the evil that reside in it. It's a darkness in which wicked men cower, afraid that their actions should be displayed to the world, right? John 3, verse 20. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come into the light, lest his works be exposed. Jesus here doesn't just shed light, Jesus is the true light. And that's why the world fears him. That's why the darkness hates him and his people, because he threatens to reveal what is hidden. Because the light of the gospel displays for the world to see the shabbiness of sin, the decrepitude and the ugliness of ungodliness. Forces the world to make a decision it does not want to make, a decision that we as individuals have to make. Are we going to slink back into the darkness and hope that no one notices the wreck of our lives? Or are we going to step into the light, be exposed, and be healed? In short, that's the choice. Now, we have this promise that the light shines in the darkness has not overcome it. How can we believe that? Because, to be honest, on a daily business, the darkness looks pretty strong. Sure looks like the darkness is gaining ground certain days, at any rate, doesn't it? War, hatred, confusion. I mean, a couple weeks ago, you saw newlyweds who were willing to drop a baby off at grandma's house before going out to murder dozens of people. This is the darkness. The perseverance of racism, basic hostility to the gospel, you name it. Just a lot of dark out there that we see. How can we be certain that the darkness has not and will not overcome the light and us? Well, John gives 3 reasons here very quickly. 3 pegs to hang our hats on. And again, bear with me because we're just reading backwards here. First is this, that the light wins the battle against the darkness because the light is the life of the Son of God. Verse 4, right? In him was life, and the life was the light of men. See, the light has overcome the darkness because he who is the light of the world is more powerful than the darkness. The thing is, darkness, when you get right down to it, this is a great metaphor because darkness is not really a thing, is it? Darkness is not a thing. Darkness is just the absence of light. Death is not a thing. Death is the absence of life. Evil is not really a thing. Sure looks like it. Evil is the absence of good, the absence of God. In the same way that you light one candle and that darkness flees, what looks like this big solid monolith of sin and suffering and death, it is scattered by the light of the Son of God. There's no contest. There's no contest. Second here is that the light is the light of the life of the one who created all things. Verse 3, all things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Here's a basic principle for you, right? Basic principle that the creation is never more powerful than its creator. Now that you can say, wait a minute, that doesn't apply. I can build something that can kill me. Plenty of people have. George Churchward, who was an English railway pioneer, was also the first person struck and killed by his own locomotive. This happens, right? Henry Smolinski, you haven't heard of him. There's a reason. He built the flying car. He based it on a Ford Pinto. I'm not joking. He built a flying car out of a Ford Pinto. It flew for 100 feet. And it killed him. You know, we can come up with lists like this. But this is different. This is different because a person who turns a Pinto into an airplane, I'm sorry, it's not funny because he died. It shouldn't be. Max Valier invented the liquid-fueled rocket. It was a big deal. It killed him. And so on. There's a massive difference, though, between making a locomotive or a plane or a rocket out of stuff that already exists and creating everything out of nothing. When we're talking about Jesus, we're talking not just about some guy, not an admirable person. We're talking about the one through whom everything came into being from nothing. Through whom everything was made, and without whom was not anything made that was made. It's kind of a trump card. How can you be sure that the light shines in the darkness and the darkness will not overcome it? Because he made all things. He is greater. And finally here, just back to verse 1, the promise that the light and the life that guarantees the promise is no one less than God himself. Right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here we have reason for hope that the one who has made this promise is himself the light of the world. The one who has made this promise is the creator of all things. The one who has made this promise is God himself in human flesh. Had I been thinking ahead, we just played God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. Now for years, this is a lesson in the importance of punctuation. It turns out that the title of the carol is God Rest Ye Merry, Gentlemen, not God Rest Ye, Merry Gentlemen. I just thought they had a little to drink most of my life. They're merry gentlemen, and they're supposed to be rested or something. But it's God Rest Ye Merry, Gentlemen. Had I had more foresight, that would have been the title of that would have been our last hymn, but I wrote this last night, so hey. God, the only way we can rest merry, that is to rest in joy, in spite of the darkness that we see out there, is to know the light, and to know and to be assured that the light, the life of men, the light of the world, Jesus Christ, is greater, is stronger, has not been overcome, was not overcome, even when the darkness nailed him to the cross, was not overcome by death, but now lives and reigns forever. That the darkness has not and will not overcome him. And if we belong to him, that the darkness has not and will not in the long run, not in the end, overcome us. Praise God. Amen.